Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to take you through a detailed tutorial on how to strike the ball across goal from an angle. And this is an area of the pitch you might find yourself in, especially as a striker, but also a winger and a midfielder. So let's first talk about how we might get into this scenario in the first place. So a couple of ways you might find yourself in this situation is if you're a striker and you're making a diagonal run, because usually if you make a straight run, that's easy to pick up from the centre back. But if you make a diagonal run, you can often find pockets of space. It's very distracting and hard to defend against. So if I'm a striker making a diagonal run and my winger's driving inside and threading this ball beyond this player, and I'm making a diagonal run, I can get onto this ball and be in a position to strike the ball. As you can see, I'm at an angle. Another scenario you might find yourself in is if you're a winger and your midfielder or number 9 has the ball and you're making a diagonal run on the opposite side of this defender. So if I'm playing on the right wing, I'm driving diagonally and they thread the ball into that same space. Or if you're a winger, you might get yourself into this situation by dribbling at this player, body feinting inside, driving down the line, and if there's no option to cross, a good option might be to strike the ball across goal. It's a good goal scoring opportunity. So now that we've found ourselves in this situation, it's all about getting the technique right. First, let's identify a couple of mistakes I see a lot of players making. First mistake is that they drag the ball wide. So we've gotten in this situation, we see the goal, and we drag the ball wide. We don't get a clean connection on the ball, and it goes out for a goal kick. Another mistake I often see is the opposite. So they're in this situation, and instead of getting the ball across goal, they end up hitting it wide at the near post here. So if you find yourself consistently dragging the ball past that far post, one of two things might be happening. The first is that you may be over-rotating your hips, because we want to square our hips towards our target to generate accuracy. So if I over-rotate my hips and my hips are beyond that far post, that's exactly where the ball is going to go. Secondly, you might not be connecting with the ball directly behind it in relation to your target. So if my target's that far post, I want to draw a line through the ball, directly through the center, and on the opposite side is where I should be making contact with the ball. If I'm getting directly behind that ball and following through towards that direction, it's going to help the direction of the ball. So if my hips are squared in that direction, and I connect through the back of the ball and follow through in that direction, we should see an improvement in accuracy. So let's correct the technique to begin with. So we're focusing only on accuracy. We'll introduce the power later on. So our target is that bottom left corner if we're striking from the right side. So we need to align our hips in that direction, point our planting foot in that direction, strike directly through the back of the ball, and then follow through towards that bottom corner. So nice and easy, roll the ball out of your feet, steer in that direction, and follow through towards the goal. And as you can see, the accuracy improves tremendously. So now that we've worked on the technique, it's important to add some match realism to it as well, because in the midst of a match, everything feels like it's going 100 miles per hour. So it's easy to lose composure in these situations. But if you focus on the fundamental elements of your technique, take that extra second to align your body and focus on a quality strike, you're gonna have much better results. So after you've mastered the technique closer to goal, just rolling out your feet, start to increase the distance and give yourself more runway so you can get up to a stride, and then apply those fundamentals that we've already worked on. So push it out your feet, get up to a stride, and find that bottom corner. Steering my body in that direction, hips, planting foot, and follow through, it's going to generate more accuracy. So we've covered what happens if we over-rotate our hips and strike off-center on the ball. We typically drag the ball wide. But what happens if we're hitting the ball wide at the near post? Some of you might be finding yourself in this situation. You want to strike that ball towards goal, and it's coming off your foot, you're shanking it, you're slicing it, and it's going in this direction, wide past the near post. So what's happening in this scenario is the opposite of the first. So in the first, we were over-rotating our hips. In this scenario, we're under-rotating our hips. As we already mentioned, we want our hips to align in the direction we want the ball to go. So if I'm sprinting towards goal, the ball's been threaded through, my hips are naturally facing away from the goal automatically. So if I just strike through the back of that ball, even if I then follow through towards my target, my contact has already happened. And if I'm striking through the back of the ball, as you can see, if we draw a line through it, the ball's going to go wide every single time. So we need to make sure we're hitting through the back of the ball towards our target. So if we're in this situation here, where we're not rotating our hips enough, we need to put a bit more emphasis on rotating that planting foot towards our target. When we're aligned towards our target, it's a lot easier to plant our standing foot towards our target. It's more natural because our hips are already going in this direction. But when we're facing away from goal, we have to put a little bit more emphasis on that rotation. So if I then plant my foot, open it up towards my target, and then strike through the back of the ball, as you can see, my hips align in that direction. We're going from this, aligning our hips away from the goal, to rotating, which allows our hips to align towards our target. And that instantly improves your accuracy. So let's fix this under rotation the same way we did with the over rotation. We're just gonna roll the ball out of our feet, focusing only on accuracy. We'll introduce the match realism and the power later on, but really emphasize pointing the big toe of your planting foot towards that left side of the goal. And naturally, your hips are gonna align in that direction. And if you're hitting through the back of the ball, you should see it fly into that left-hand side. So just roll it out your feet, rotate, and as you can see, accuracy, keeping my chest over the ball to keep it low into the ground. That's going to be very difficult for the goalkeeper to save because they'll shift across, so the momentum is already going to that left side. So not only do they have to go back across their momentum, but they also have to get low to the ground, which is very difficult at match speed. So by remaining disciplined with our technique, pointing that standing foot towards our target, aligning our hips in that direction, keeping it low, it's going to give yourself a really good chance of scoring. Then of course, once you've gotten the technique correct, we need to add some match realism to it, so that when we come to a match, we've rehearsed these at high intensity, so it becomes second nature. So increase the distance, give yourself more runway, but apply the same fundamental techniques, aligning everything towards your target. So the biggest focus here is that big toe of your planting foot going towards your target. So knock it out your feet, get up into a stride, and find the corner. So we've corrected over-rotating, we've also corrected under-rotating, but there's also a third scenario you might find yourself in. And that's where the ball is traveling a little bit more away from goal, almost at a 45-degree angle. But we still have a clear strike on goal, and we want to take advantage of this opportunity. So if my ball is 45 degrees away from the goal, it's going to be very difficult for me to rotate my foot towards my target. It's super awkward, especially when running at speed. I'm probably going to trip over, and it's very difficult to then get my laces behind the ball, as we have been doing with the first two strikes. So in this scenario, we actually want to change the contact area of the foot. So for the first two strikes, we've been focusing mainly on the laces here, this flat surface on top of the foot. This allows us to generate power, getting our laces tight against that ball and following through towards our target. But because we're traveling away from goal, it's going to be very difficult to do that. Either our planting foot's not going to be in the right direction and we're going to get our legs crossed, or we're going to rotate, but the momentum of our run is going to take us off balance. So how do we approach this situation here? So we're actually going to keep our hips facing away from goal, and we're going to focus only on connecting with the back of that ball. Because if we connect with the back of the ball in relation to our target, it's still going to steer the ball in that direction. It's not going to be as clean as hitting it with the laces. It's going to have a bit of spin on the ball, but you can still catch goalkeepers off guard from this type of angle. So we're actually going to use the inside of the foot here towards the big toe. Very similar technique to whipping the ball, but we're just going to be hitting slightly higher on that ball to keep it low. If I hit low on the ball, it's going to lift the ball over the crossbar. So we're still whipping the ball with this knuckle of the foot here, getting around the ball, but we're hitting higher on the ball to keep it low. We're trying to generate spin so it wraps into that far bottom corner. So I'm still facing away from the goal, but as I contact the ball, it's on the side here, and as you can see, it's through the back of the ball facing my target. And then I follow through across my body to help with the accuracy. So let's look at it nice and easy to begin with. I'm keeping my hips away from the goal and allowing the contact on the back of the ball to steer it across. So out of my feet, wrapping across the ball here, and as you can see, I'm able to steer it in the direction I want it to go. Not as clean as hitting it with the laces. It's going to have some spin, but if you get it far enough into that corner, you're still going to catch the goalie off guard. And then just as we did with the first two techniques, we want to add some match realism to it so that we've increased the intensity so that when it comes to a match, we're rehearsed for the scenario. So we want to push the ball a little bit further this time at a 45-degree angle, keeping our hips facing away from the goal, but getting up into a stride and working on this technique. So we push it out of our feet, get onto it, and then wrap it into that far side. So you might be thinking, all right, you keep hitting the bottom corners, but isn't it better to hit the top corners? Isn't that more difficult for the goalkeepers? And I would have thought the same, especially growing up. I always wanted to hit those top corners. But I had a really privileged opportunity to film with Harry Kane, one of the best finishers on the planet. And something he said to me really stood out because we were hitting finishes over and over again, and he just kept hitting those bottom corners, but every single time consistently. We probably took 50 shots and I genuinely don't remember him missing a single strike. He's that disciplined with his technique and that rehearsed. He hits the corners every single time. So I remember we were shooting for a while, he kept hitting the bottom corners over and over again. Then he hit this one perfectly into the top corner. I remember saying to him, "There's the one, that's the money shot." And he said, having said that, I'm certainly more of a bottom corner man. And I asked why, and he said, because I'm paid to score goals, not nice goals. Goals win games, not beautiful goals. And that really stood out to me because it showed me how professional he is in front of goal. He's only focused on putting it in the back of the net and hitting it into those high percentage scoring areas. So although it's really good to score nice goals once in a while, and even Harry Kane scores absolute bangers, if you want to be a lethal, clinical, top level striker, you just need to be scoring goals often. And typically, lethal goal scorers are hitting those bottom corners more often than they're hitting the top ones. And what's great about hitting bottom corners, if we focus on the discipline of our technique, hitting that bottom corner, and then we're slightly off balance, we have a lot of room for error. There's a big margin. So if we're slightly off balance, but we've aimed for that bottom corner, it might lift slightly and end up in the top corner. But if we're only aiming for the top corner and then we're off balance, it's going to lift over the bar. So even a miss-hit bottom corner shot has a chance of going in the back of the net, much more likely than miss-hitting a top corner strike. So just something to bear in mind if you're looking to be a top-level striker. These bottom corners should be your bread and butter. Finding those corners with power and accuracy, disciplining your technique, and it doesn't always have to be a perfect strike. If you're aiming across goal with enough power, with enough technique, it always has a chance of going in the back of the net. So something just to bear in mind. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and take some of those technique tips on board, especially if you're over-rotating or under-rotating. Work on these techniques and you might identify what was going wrong before. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure you smash the like button, hit that subscribe button for weekly training videos, and I'll see you guys in my next video.